Alright, here's a quick overview of what I do to deal with auto layout in Xcode 4. I'm not sure how much this would be applicable to Xcode 5, but it should help to some degree. So what I've got here is the classic keyboarding issue where you start up the application, and as soon as you get the keyboard focus, it covers the lower part of the screen with the keyboard. So you can't do anything about that. You have to handle the return key through the delegate callback. So what I've done is I've created a base class that I like to use, which handles various details for me. So you can see, collapse everything. When it appears, it starts subscribing to these notifications, and when it disappears, it stops observing those notifications. Now down here it handles those notifications with those methods, and I have some overrides here which I would want to implement. I would pass in the height and duration values. The given duration and height that I can extract from the notifications are handled with this code below. So with this code in mind, what I want to do is modify the storyboards so that I can have a scroll view that I can scroll. Now what's really tricky with scroll views in auto layout is there's an intrinsic layout for the height and width, I suppose, of the content size for the contents of the scroll view. So there's a technique for dealing with that, but it's really kind of tricky. So all I do is I just make it really simple. What you can do is you could start out by highlighting everything, and then you go into and embed in scroll view or view, and that does really weird things. Well, often it actually will kind of like create this strange layout that goes with it. I don't want to do that directly. So what I do instead is I just pull in some dummies, some dummy view controllers. So I'll start with this. So what I want is to start out with a scroll view. First thing I do with the scroll view is I want to get the layout to do what I want it to do. You can see by default it's pretty much going to stick to the edges. Since the keyboard's going to be coming up, I need to be able to control the height to adapt to the keyboard covering the bottom part. So I need to get out of the way so the content size will continue to scroll within the content size inside the scroll view. So if the constraints are like this, it's just going to automatically fill the screen the way it is. The screen's not actually changing in size, so I need to make it change in size for me. So what I do is I give it a height constraint down below. See, that's over now on the right side. And you see I have the height constraint now. Now I have the bottom constraint and the top constraint. What I want to do is have the top constraint stay in place, and I want the bottom constraint to go away. You can see the purple ones I cannot delete and the blue ones I can. If I wanted to set it up so I can delete it, I could promote it to a use constraint and then I could delete it. If I delete it now, it'll probably just come back as a purple one. So I just leave those alone. It's trying to prevent an ambiguous layout. It doesn't allow an ambiguous layout in Xcode 4, which is not true in 5. But what I want to get rid of is the bottom. Sometimes it lets me get rid of the bottom, sometimes it doesn't. So what I do is if it doesn't let me, so let me say I add it back. I just select and edit. Oh, it's a -0. And I give it a lower value. So at least that way the height will override the bottom if it conflicts. So you can kind of jump around between these two tabs, which takes a lot of time with auto layout. So next up I have the height, and next I want to be able to have all this content in there. But my experience now is I don't want to pull these in here directly because that has to do a lot of logic to deal with that, and I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is put those into a container view, and then I'll manage the view from there. To make that a little easier to work with, I don't do it all inside one view controller and fight with it. What I do instead is use a scene, just a dummy scene that I'm going to throw away after I move some things around. And I'm going to take that view, put it on here. This makes it a lot easier. One of the things that makes it easier is the fact that I see only the constraints that I'm working with. You can see over here I have all these constraints for all the text fields, even though I am currently selecting just the view. So now I have the view within the view. This is the view within the view. I'm going to go ahead and change the label on it to container view. Make it easier to select. So if you hold on Shift Control, you can actually click anywhere where you might be over something. It shows you a list of items that you're over. That makes it a lot easier to select things and move things around accordingly. So now what I want to do is I want to control the height, and I'm going to give it the height constraint, and then go back to the container view, and I want to delete the bottom constraint if it allows me, which it does. And then what I want to do is take all these text views and scroll them in place, or drag them over here, and then I'm going to take my container view and catch up. And now I have everything in one scene. Get this closer to this guy. It's a little squeezed since I'm using less of the screen here. So I got the scroll view is what I want. So I'll drag it over here. Put it in place. Now you can see it's a little too big. And that's okay right now. What we can do is we know that we don't need it to be super huge. So what I want to do is get the value of this position. So this is going to be height of 30, so 430 plus 10. Container view. Gives me a nice size there. Go back to the container view. Shift Control, select, give it a light gray background so I can see it. And then from here, I want to go scroll view, and I can say 440, was it? Which does that on me. That's one of the reasons why I move things around like this. So I have this view, empty scene over here. I can move this scene over here temporarily. And what I can do is I can say, whoa, scroll view, I want you back over here. Container view, that's what I want to move over here, just to hold on to it. The constraints that it generates automatically are unimportant. And so I'm going to select scroll view. I'm going to set the height to 440. I'm going to set the height in here. I'm going to set the size to freeform. I've been doing this a lot lately where I make the size whatever I feel like it needs to be to only fit what I want to see here. So this needs to be set. It keeps on changing values on me, so I have to be very careful what the order I do things in. So now I have everything set the way I want it to be. 440. I can go over here, I can grab this container, get some space so I can see both of them, bring it over here. Alright, should be done with this. So you can see I have text fields, I have container, I have the scroll view. Now let's verify I still have what I want in here, which it may have, and it probably did delete my height constraint, which it looks like it did. So what I want to do is I want to add the height constraint back. I want to go back and select the scroll view, find the bottom space to super view, the one that is blue. It doesn't say anything related to a text field or some other container or another view. So the container view stuff is those are constraints that are related to the scroll view and the container view. I need the scroll view to super view. So bottom space to super view, which is blue. I can delete that. Make sure it doesn't come back, because sometimes it does. This bottom space is to the container view. It's not the super view. So now within this context, I am all set here. When the container view, I need to make sure it has the height constraint, which it still does. So that should be good. Now one last detail is this is my class that's behind, which inherits from the base view controller. You can see here. So you go into so I've got this already set up. All I need to do is connect the scroll view to its outlet. Scroll view height I need to set. It's a little trickier to catch this one. So what you do is you scroll view, go over to the layout. You can see the one here that says 440. Select and edit will also happen to focus it here. So what you can do is now you can drag it more easily. The one thing I don't have in here turned on yet simply is the tap gesture, which I'll leave that out for now. And then from here I can go into this code. So what I always like to do is I have an assertion that I use. This is custom assertions that I put into the precompiled header as a definition macro. It works differently than nsassert. Nsassert actually references this, or self, which causes a retain cycle in certain scenarios with certain blocks. So this is a macro that specifically doesn't use self. So this just takes care of that. Now what you can see is when the keyboard resize for shown keyboard, when this is run, it'll grab the height and duration that's given and set the scroll height constraint to the constant value that it's. Well, it starts with the total height, and we'll start with the constant value. So the new constant value is going to be the view frame's height minus the height of the keyboard. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, see, initially it doesn't do anything because we need to do something on view will appear. And that's just simply you want to resize for hidden keyboard. Zero and 0. Now, depending on a 3.5-inch display and a 4-inch display, this would work accordingly to whatever screen size it is. So right now I have the simulator set up with 3.5, but it would adapt accordingly to the 4-inch display, which is probably the default for what this the storyboard is set up in right now. So you can see it's a 4-inch display here. Can make it resized that way. Since this is a free form, it just stays the way it needs to be, and it's fine. It resizes it when it gets loaded. Now from here, one more little detail that I put in to make things a little bit easier. I put in a tap gesture. This will force the whichever field is currently selected, which is causing the keyboard to show the first responder will be resigned when that happens. So I can tap somewhere else. Should be able to tap somewhere else. Oh, it's not fully connected. Just a second. What I want is this view connected, so it's in the gesture recognizers collection, and it doesn't need the delegate connected because I'm not really going to do anything with that, but you can see it's connected now. So if I do tap anywhere in that view, it'll take it and release the keyboard. So this way I'm basically able to manage the layout. I'm able to navigate around, so if I hit Shift Control and select Shift Control and I click, I can see all the things that are in here. I can go behind the text view by doing the same. I can go anywhere in the side of the screen. With the complex hierarchy, it's just really valuable. I just recently learned how to do this. I didn't know these options were available. Obviously Control Shift or Control Option or Shift Option dragging also does a copy. There's lots of little keyboard commands like that, which come in very handy. This is a sample project with within my collection of interfaces, which are available on GitHub. So just simply search for Brennan MKE on GitHub, and you can see these various sample projects. There's a few other samples in here. One of them is stacks. With stacks, I've got some constraints that are programmatically put in place to create a stacked view. So each of these views are programmatically set up so that I set the constraints for the top, which will create a top constraint, leading, trailing, and a height constraint for the first one, and all the ones that go below it have a different constraint, which go to the previous view. So it has a top constraint, leading, trailing, and a height constraint as well. Works differently connecting to the previous view, whereas this one would actually be talking likely to the super view. So here's the super view reference. This is one other experiment where I was trying to figure out how I would go about doing that, because it's a lot easier to work with CG rect frames, which is sort of the old way to do things now. So going forward, I'll be doing this like everyone else. So hopefully this was helpful.